Hey everybody, it's Holly here today with a new video for MarkerPop. I'm using the Mama Elephant Space Bear set, and we're going to start out by making a galaxy background on a piece of watercolor cardstock, and I'm using several colors of Distress ink. I'm starting out by smushing the ink pads onto the craft mat, and then I'm just using a wet paintbrush and adding it onto the watercolor paper. I'm not putting any water down first, and I'm just going in and building my layers. I'm using squeezed lemonade, picked raspberry, blueprint sketch, seedless preserves, and some black soot. Now, I started out doing this, and this is sped up really fast because it took about 40 minutes to get the look I was trying to get. After I had the initial colors down that I wanted, I dried it with my heat gun, and then I went back in and tried to add in some more ink with the paintbrush, and kept playing with it and playing with it, and I just wasn't getting the look that I was trying to go for. I was trying to go for a galaxy look where it had more of a, I guess, like a big pink center with a light in the center and then darker around the edges. So I'm just putting more ink down on the craft mat, and I just keep adding layers and layers and going over it. And it just wasn't working out for me. So then I decided, let's just try to smush the mini ink pads right onto the paper. So I went ahead around the edges and smushed in the colors: Blueprint Sketch, Seedless Preserves, Chip Sapphire, and then I added a little bit of water with the paintbrush, and that just wasn't quite working, so I spritzed it. And lo and behold, that worked the best. I spritzed it just enough that it allowed the water to run a little bit where I could tilt it on the board I had it taped to. And that actually gave me the look that I was trying to get. So in the future, if it's not working out, just keep playing with it. Don't give up. Like I said, it took me about 40 minutes to finally get what I was looking for. So I heat set it. So I finished up heat setting it. And then I wanted the edges of it to be a little bit darker, so I decided to go in with some black soot. I started out by smushing it onto the craft mat, just like I was there before, and then I started flicking it in the edges because I wanted a little bit of splatter, but I didn't want to start out with a giant amount of black soot around the edges, so I kind of played with it with the paintbrush, and again, that just wasn't working for me. So I decided to use my finger. Finger is always going to be your best tool, and I just put a little bit of water on the end of my finger and just kind of blended it in. And that seemed to work the best to get the look that I was looking for. I just tapped it in, tapped some more ink on, just rubbed it in. And Ranger makes this great little scrubby tool. I think it's called the Craft Scrubber, and that will take Distress ink right off your fingers like nothing. You just run it under some water and scrub your hands with it. It's a great little invention. So here I decided I wanted to add some splatters. So I added some picket fence distress paint with using a paintbrush. I just splattered some on. This is supposed to like mimic like the stars in the galaxy. So I heat set that, and then it didn't really give me the look I wanted, and my background wasn't completely dry, so some of the paint absorbed the distress ink that was down, so they turned a little bit lavender. So I went in with some picket fence distress spray stain and splattered a little bit of that on. I heat set that as well, and then I just set the whole thing aside to dry while I worked on the image. And in the final project, you'll see that the splatters are actually more purple than they are white. In the future, I would let this dry probably overnight to make sure it's completely dry, or several hours, and then I would come back in and add the white splatters, because they're going to pop more if they stay white, but it's going to absorb the colors, and I had a lot of color on that piece of paper. So here we're going to start using the stamp set, which is the Mama Elephant Space Bears, and this is from the February release. And I'm stamping that down on some Nina Solar White cardstock using the Tuxedo Memento black ink. And I'm going to go in and color it with my Copics. And I was going for the look of a polar bear in space. So I'm going to use the W's, and I'm starting out with W00, and then I'm going to use W1 and W3, and then I'm going to use W5 just on the bear's snout for a little darker contrast. And I start out just kind of flicking in from the edges of where I want my shading to be. And a polar bear is white, but they're not completely white. They have this yellowish look to them. And then once I have the polar bear complete, then I go in with the balloon. And I'm going to use BG10, BG11, and BG13. And I'm going to start out using the lighter shade, then the medium, and the darker, and work my way backwards. And then I also add some BG10 around the space helmet, just to give a little reflection of the glass. And then I blend that out with the Zero Colorless Blender. And the video was sped up. I'm really sorry about that, but it was like 2.5 hours long, and it's got to be like 12 minutes for me to get it uploaded to YouTube in a decent amount of time. So then I'm going to go ahead and add some clear wink of Stella just over the helmet area to add some more of the reflection of the helmet. Then I'm going to use the coordinating dies with a little bit of washi tape to hold down to cut those out. And I just run it through my Big Shot, and you can use a Big Shot or Cuttlebug, whatever die cutting machine you have on home. I think the most intense part of this card actually is just doing the background. The bear was super easy to do. I think he only took like 10 minutes to color and cut out and die cut and everything. And then I'm just using a little bit of the Zero because I got a little bit of the BG bled a little bit. So then I'm going to go ahead and take my background off of my board, and I'm just using a cutting board and some painter's tape. And I'm going to die cut it with the My Favorite Things large stitched wonky dies stacks, I believe it's called. And I'm going to use the largest one. I'm just going to run it through the Big Shot and die cut it. And then I'm going to use the sentiments that come with the stamp set. We're going to use Hooray, It's Your Birthday, and a couple of the stars. And I'm just kind of figuring out where I'm going to position them on the card with the image. And I'm going to use the new Mini Misty for this particular card. So I'm going to go ahead and put my paper. First I'm going to use a static bag to kind of make sure that everything on that is completely dry so my embossing powder doesn't stick everywhere. So I just go ahead and put my image in the Misty, or the piece of paper in the Misty. And I'm going to use a little grid that I have to make sure my sentiment is lined up straight. And this is a template you can get on the My Sweet Petunia website to download on a piece of transparency, or you could make your own. So I just get everything all lined up. And then I'm going to use some Versamark ink to stamp that down. And then I'm just going to use some white embossing powder to emboss it. The white really helps it pop against that dark background. And there I had a little bit of powder that stuck, so I just used a little paintbrush to kind of brush that off. And when you're heating embossing powder, it really helps if you preheat your heat tool for just a few seconds, about 30 seconds before you hit the paper with it, and it will help your paper not warp as well. There's also some stars in the stamp set, and these are kind of cute because they're like dashed like the sentiments are. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp some of those on there as well. And I'm going to go ahead and heat set them. Once I get all the stars heat set, I'm going to go ahead and add some foam adhesive to the back of the panel. Because it was watercolor and it's a little bit warped, I really want to make sure I have enough coverage of adhesive to get that down. And I'm going to add that to a top folding standard A2 size card. And I just made that out of a piece of Nina Solar White, and I just scored it along the top and made my card front. And then once I have that down, I'm going to go ahead and add the bear and the balloon with some additional foam adhesive. So I just add it to the front of the card front there, and then I'm going to go ahead and add the bear and the balloon down. I add a little bit of white gel pen around the outside of the balloon image where my BG marker had bled some, and I wouldn't come up with that colorless blender. I thought I was going to add some sequins, but they just didn't look right, so I decided not to do the sequins. I think the background's a little too busy, but anyway, that finishes my card for today. Nice and easy with the images. Thanks for popping in today, and I will see you again next week with another new video. And hope you guys have a great weekend. Thanks for stopping in. Bye-bye.